Yay! Very good. Well done. Right on cue. So, greetings, everyone. My name is Reverend Linda Troy. I'm a retired United Methodist pastor. And Mark, as many of you know, was Jewish, but he was also very ecumenical. And so he believed that all faiths are praying to the same God. And he supported me wholeheartedly when I went to seminary. And he loved to tease me about being a woman of the cloth. So if I ever said or did anything that seemed slightly, not exactly correct, and he'd say, "And you're a woman of the cloth." So if you know Mark, you can hear him teasing me that way. So I worked with Sharon in publishing back in the 1980s, and as well as Randy Sims up here. And Sharon and Mark are part of our family, our extended family. We celebrated many holiday meals together, and my brother and sister-in-law, my niece are here because my sister-in-law was often cooking the holiday meals that Sharon and Mark were coming down for. And they came to my ordination back in 2004, and our three daughters grew up calling them Aunt Sharon and Uncle Mark. And so all three of our girls flew in from Portland to see Mark in the past month or so. And our oldest daughter, Christine, or Sam, as Sharon called her before she was born, is here today. So I wanted to introduce a few people who were instrumental in Mark and Sharon's care these past few months. And when I call your name, if you'll just stand up and wave and sit down. So Randy Sims is another publishing friend from the 1980s, a neighbor in Westerville, and he's been very involved in helping Sharon find a place to be comfortable over at Paramount, and also helping to take care of Mark during his time at James. And so thank you for everything. And then Ryan Brzezinski was a former student of Sharon's in a business writing class, and then she continued to help him as he was writing some papers, and they became good friends. Retired firefighter, currently serves on Life Flight helicopters, keeping us alive on the flight to the helicopter. And so be very nice to Ryan when you see him today. And then Vicki Weldon. Vicki's here in the back. Yep. And so Vicki was Sharon's former personal trainer when Sharon was doing some physical therapy and strengthening things. And she also became a good friend. And so over the past couple of months, we've been kind of rotating, taking care of Sharon as well as Carolyn, Randy's wife. And so thank you to all of you for the way you've come around this family and really been their family. Thank you. We want to thank the Honor Guard that we have here tonight. They told me that they're associated with different places, but they are attached to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where Mark worked during part of his military career. And so we will see more of them later on this evening. And I wanted to invite everyone to come to Paramount Senior Living Center. After the service, there will be a dinner served. And so everyone is invited. And do we have directions or an address, or Randy?
To get to Paramount, just go north on State Street to the Village Parkway, turn left, and go to the brand new Chick-fil-A right past Cleveland Avenue. Right before the Chick-fil-A turn right, and Paramount is right behind it. And there's parking at the east and west end of the building. If you're handicapped and you assist you to park in the driveway.
Right. And again, dinner will be served for everybody. So we'd love to see you there. And I wanted to also just give a special thank you to Terry, who works with Sharon at Paramount and is just here as a supportive friend tonight. And so, Terry, we're thankful for that. And the burial for Mark will be in the future at Arlington. At a date yet to be determined. I've learned, maybe some of you already knew, but there is a waiting list. And so we're getting in the queue. And when they tell us it's time, we'll be sure to let all of you know as well. And then lastly, later in the service, you'll be invited, if you care, to share a story about Mark with all of us. So you might want to be thinking about what you want to share. I know people get really nervous, like, oh, I don't want to stand up and talk in front of everybody, but these stories are so comforting and uplifting to those who love Mark, especially Sharon, that I encourage you to try to get over your stage fright and think of some anecdote that you can tell about Mark to just give Sharon a lift tonight. And then finally, I want to introduce Nick Strasser. Nick is the youth director at Spring Road Church of Christ. He's also the grandson-in-law of Sharon's paramount neighbor across the hall, Caroline. And Nick is going to lead us in singing, and we're going to start with "This Land Is My Land." Does everybody have a copy of the words? Anybody need some words? Okay, Randy needs some words, Christine. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and so if everybody will please stand, and then we'll sing. Thanks, Nick.
If you're not familiar with the Church of Christ denomination, all you need to know is that I'm used to only hearing my voice. So I don't need a microphone. And there is a video and for audio. I mean, yes. I don't have any control.
Some music will play. Yes. Seated? Thank you, Nick. And let us pray. O God, giver of life and conqueror of death, we come before you in sorrow, seeking your comfort and peace. Grant us grace to bear our heavy burdens and remind us of the enduring love that transcends earthly boundaries. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you now for one another in our need and for all anywhere who mourn with us. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. In all our ways, we trust you. Amen. Well, it's at times like these when people gather together that we often turn to Scripture to look for words of comfort And so here are these verses from Isaiah 61. Isaiah was one of the prophets in the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to comfort those who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. And then from Isaiah 40, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And then please remain seated as we sing My Country, 'Tis of Thee.
Of thee I sing, and where my
She does.
Are you projecting voice? I think I'll just use my voice. Okay, glad shot. Here she comes. And that is
Thank you, Vicki. From Psalm 121, I lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. My Lord will not let your foot be moved. The Lord who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, the one who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil and will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. And the familiar 23rd Psalm. Some of you may have this memorized from the King James Version, and if you do, feel free to join in. If you don't, that's okay, you're free to listen. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Back during World War II, on August 18, 1941, Pilot Officer John Gillespie McGee climbed into a Spitfire for a test flight. He was part of the Royal Canadian Air Force. With its unique elliptical wings and legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the nimble Spitfire is arguably the most storied and beautifully designed fighter to come out of World War II. As John flew the fighter through a series of combat maneuvers, he experienced a euphoria that typically grips pilots as they put their high-performance airplanes through their paces. But unlike other pilots who, after landing, walk away thrilled to the point of being speechless, John was an accomplished poet, and he began translating his joyful experience into words on a piece of paper while still airborne. On September 3rd, 1941, in a letter to his parents, he wrote, "I am enclosing a verse I wrote the other day. It started at 30,000 feet and was finished soon after I landed. I thought it might interest you." That verse was the sonnet, High Flight, the most famous poem from World War II and some of mission for Air Force personnel. Sorry, I'm at that age where my mouth is starting to get dry, so forgive me. Well, all right, what happened to it? Oh, I have skipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. And so now let us remember a life well lived as we celebrate the life of Mark Allen Massen. Mark was born in New York City on September 28, 1946, to Alan and Rachel Massen. Later, Mark, his parents, and his sister Karen relocated to Norwalk, California, a suburb of Los Angeles. Mark got mostly above average grades in school. I wanted to ask about that D in his ed, but I can't anymore. Laying out here, crossing the finish line, is Massen comes in first. And we also have his old report cards laying around. So if you want to check out his grades, you're welcome to do so. Now, apparently, Mark also used a briefcase to carry books and papers around in high school. I was reading over his Facebook page, looking for some information and stories, and I found that a classmate, Dale Cullors, asked, in all caps, "Hi, Mark. Are you the young man who used to bring a briefcase to school? And am I correct? You were a combat pilot in Vietnam War? If so, thank you for that. My hat is off to you, and thanks." Can't you just see a young a briefcase full of his school books? I can also imagine that this is the time in Mark's life when he honed and further developed his snarky sense of humor. Mark attended college at University of Berkeley, getting a double major in physics and business. And after college, Mark enrolled in the Air Force, where he learned to serve as the second seater in an F-4 fighter jet, the weapons officer. And hence he earned the nickname. Exactly. Now here's a story I found online on his Norwalk High School Facebook page, where classmates were reminiscing about their time serving in Vietnam. This is told in Mark's own words, and I apologize that when there are some abbreviations, I don't know what they mean. Maybe you do. But this is what he said. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Massen, class of 1964, writing to his high school buddies who also served in Vietnam. I was flying F-4s out of North Carolina when in 1972, we were in the middle of an ORI. And as we went into the early morning briefing, they closed the doors, said the briefing was top secret for real, and the ORI was canceled. We were going to war. North Vietnam had invaded the South on Easter Monday, and President Nixon got fed up and ordered everything in the States to deploy to Southeast Asia. So with an hour's notice, off we went. Didn't know exactly where until we got to Guam, and then found out it was to Ubon, Thailand. Don't know for how long we'd be gone either, and turned out it was for several 6-month rotations. We were there from April 1972 to September 1973. We flew lots of missions throughout South Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam. Yes, I had a couple of close calls, one of which we got hit with an air-to-air missile and should have ejected. We were directly over Hanoi and decided to stay with the bird as long as she would hold together, hoping we'd be able to get to the Tonkin Gulf before we had to eject. Once we got over the water, we turned south and headed to Da Nang. We didn't have enough fuel to get there, and we couldn't refuel due to our massive damage. And he says in parentheses, I was mildly wounded. And it was too long of a distance. We figured the further we got, the less we'd have to swim. As it turned out, we got some tailwinds, and as we burned off fuel, we got lighter and were able to make a fuel-out, dead stick, one approach, cable-arrested landing in Da Nang. Of course, the bad guys were shooting at us during the landing and during the approach and landing, but there was so much damage to the plane, a few more holes didn't really make any difference. As we landed and stopped, the engines erupted into flames, so we jumped out. The front seater jumped into a ditch as the fire trucks were going to run us over, trying to put out the flames on the jet. He hurt his leg. I managed to stay out of the way, and my hand and shoulder weren't too bad. Had to stay the night there, got hit with mortar attacks as we were leaving the movie theater and going to our BOQs for the night. Other missions were not as hairy, but just as dangerous. Flying in total darkness in Laos, protecting the AC-130 gunships, and hoping to not run into the mountains in Laos. On July 4th, 1972, over 100 SAMs or SAMs shot at us over Hanoi. So yes, I had some interesting missions. Now, some other stories from Mark's Vietnam days are filled with more humor than danger. Mark would often regale us over dinner of how he and his buddies would play tricks on one another, like rigging up buckets of water on top of room doors so someone would get doused as they opened the door and the bucket of water fell on their heads. As told by another Air Force colleague, Gunner was a weapons system officer, which means he was a backseater who controlled the weapon systems rather than being the pilot. While in Vietnam, an enemy missile actually bounced off the side of the fuselage but did not explode, a common problem with missiles in those days. Instead, it apparently broke the cockpit glass and sent a shard into Mark's area and cut his hand. I think it's the same experience Mark was writing about. Unbeknownst to Gunner, the doctor correctly put Mark in for a Purple Heart. The next day, Mark was in the number 4 shooting priority with his 4-plane flight, but he turned out getting not only the shot, but a MiG kill to boot. His missile worked. And I'll let you know there's actually a recording of the cockpit chatter on the internet from this successful shooting, should you want to look it up. We have learned that the pilot in the MiG parachuted to safety, but that put Mark in a unique club of people who have shot down a MiG, and a plaque presented to Captain Mark A. Massen, MiG killer, with deep appreciation from General John W. Vogt, Commander, 7th Air Force, August 1972. Now, as it happens, other men later heard those 2 stories, the one about the missile that bumped into their plane but didn't explode, and the story about how Mark shot down the MiG. They heard those 2 stories, and in their minds, it became a sequence of faulty Vietnam missile bounces off the fuselage, and then Gunner goes in for the kill for that same MiG, as if it all happened at the same time. And while that sounds like a made-for-movie story, in actuality, it was 2 separate encounters on 2 separate days. Craig Reichow says that he worked for Gunner at Langley Air Force Base, 1982 to 1985, and Craig tells this story. Now, because it has some salty language, I'm going to beep in place of the salty language. This is when they were at the Kunsan Air Force Base. The 2 fighter squadrons stationed there had a habit in the officers' club. When another flyer would enter the room, one of them would notice and exclaim, "Let's say hello to Mark." And the whole table would cry out in response, "Hi, bleep hole." The leader would then say, "Let's say hello to bleep hole." And the response was, "Hi, Mark." Now, it wasn't just Mark that got that greeting. It was any pilot that came in, but that was the routine. It was a Kunsan thing, as all of us were on remote tours without our families, and your language could be a bit saltier, he says. And by the way, the men who flew desks, in other words, had desk jobs in the Air Force, were not accorded such welcoming accolades, only the pilots. Well, when Gunner got a new assignment at Wright Pat Air Force Base, Craig says he gave Gunner a nameplate for his desk since Mark did not have one. The front had his name, of course, but on the back, he added another engraved plate. And I'm walking because it's sitting over here. You can come and look at it later if you like. It says Gunner Massen, as you might expect. On where it's sitting on his desk, it says, "Let's say goodbye to Gunner." No salty language, but every time Mark looked up and saw that, he would remember those fun times with his buddies back in Thailand. You might notice Mark's on a table. Learned how to play it in high school. He also played the organ. And I talked to his cousin today who said that Mark taught her how to play the organ when she was 6 years old. That was Eileen. I managed to track her down. And so you might notice that over by the accordion, there's also in a shoebox a care package that actually came out of Mark's, duffel bag that's in his basement now. It was sitting on the top. So imagine he came back from Vietnam in 1975, and that care package has been sitting in there the whole time. So, 50 years. And it's interesting to note that there's boxes of cereal, there's a spork. I didn't know they had sporks back then. There are some candy bars, several packets of sugar, because if you knew Mark, you knew he liked lots of sugar. Yeah, so feel free to take some time to peek in there. It's a little dusty. Probably, I can't. I don't know if it's going to last past today, but we wanted to have it here so that you all could see it. Now, Mark loved classical music, and he played the organ and the accordion, as I said. He took his accordion to Vietnam and won several competitions on bass. And one of the Korean generals liked to have Mark play for his social gatherings and would send a driver and a car to pick Mark up to bring Mark back to play. The general sent a car. After giving Mark a Jeep to drive himself, the general realized that Mark did not know how to drive a stick shift. I'm not sure how many gearboxes were stripped before the general figured it out. When Mark was serving in San Antonio, after Sharon and I had been working together at Southwestern Publishing, they moved to a new location, to San Antonio. I had an 18-month-old daughter and another baby on the way, and I decided to fly to San Antonio from Cincinnati with our young daughter to visit Mark and Sharon. This was in 1987, before cell phones. In fact, answering machines were kind of a new thing back then. Now, my first flight was delayed, causing me to miss the second flight to San Antonio. And as the gate agents were working to get everybody on another plane, I was wondering and worried about how would Mark and Sharon know how to find me, because I had no way to get a hold of them to tell them what was going on. So the best I could do was call their home and leave a message on that newfangled contraption called an answering machine. But I knew they would not be coming to their home before they came to get me at the airport. So I was anxious that they wouldn't get the message in time and wouldn't know how to find me. So imagine my relief when I walked off the plane in San Antonio, 6 months pregnant, 18-month-old in a stroller, and there are Sharon and Mark standing at the gate, back when you could go to the gate, with a helium balloon in hand for Christine. I was so relieved to see the two of them. They found me. Mark had called into their home phone answering machine from their remote location to get my message. And back in those days, it seemed miraculous. I was in awe that Mark and Sharon knew just what to do in order to find me. Mark was a problem solver in big ways and small. In addition to serving in Vietnam, Langley, Lackland, and Wright Pat Air Force bases, Mark also served in Italy, his last post before retiring. And by the time he retired, he'd been awarded several medals and recognitions. To name a few: the Purple Heart, Bronze and Silver Stars, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Force Commendation Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal. And then after 27 years, Mark retired from the military. But as a retired veteran, Mark continued his pursuit of excellence. Mark had earned an MBA from Central Michigan University and a Master in Accounting from Franklin University. He opened his own financial planning group after receiving recognition as a certified financial planner. And never content to stand still, Mark also started working on a PhD in accounting at Franklin University at the age of 75. Now, for fun, Mark took a bartending course with Sharon, and then Mark worked bartending for the Columbus Associates for Performing Arts at Ohio Theater, where he could also satisfy his love of music and theater. Mark's drink flashcards, are they here, Randy? Okay, so they're over on the table. You can take a look at the stack about this thick, how Mark taught himself how to make various drinks. Any drink you could probably think of, there's a flashcard that tells how to make it. And I've heard, I never saw him there, but I heard that when he was working, hands were always going and he knew what the and he had those set up. Now, somebody who worked with him there said he was a little bit prickly. I'm not sure that military background was always going over, with other people, but he got the job done and he did it well. In his spare time, if you can think he had any, Mark was an ambassador for Lifeline of Ohio after receiving a kidney transplant from his wife 17 years ago, and he volunteered with planning and raising money for the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer. Mark also volunteered for the Rotary Club, whose motto is service before self, which seems to embody who Mark was. With the Rotary Club, he especially enjoyed welcoming guests to the Field of Flags on Memorial Day weekends. Now, as you probably know, the one activity that Mark and Sharon enjoyed more than anything else was going on cruises. I think Sharon was the one who introduced Mark to cruising, and he happily joined in. I'm told they went on at least 200 cruises just on Royal Caribbean. And I know they also took cruises on other lines because they took a cruise on Costa with my family, and we also took a cruise on Disney Cruise Line. And so I don't know how many total cruises you guys have done. 200 plus. They even took several cruises that crossed the Atlantic Oceans as ships were repositioned from the Caribbean to Europe. And as usual, Mark and Sharon made friends wherever they went. One couple they met while cruising, Anne and Frank Ward, are here today. They drove down from Ontario, Canada, to support Sharon. There were even times when Mark's military life and their cruising lives intersected. Walt Burr says, I first met Mark when his battle-damaged F-4 landed at Da Nang Air Force Base in Vietnam instead of returning to Thailand. This was in 1972, that episode that Mark was talking about. And then Walt goes on to say, we ran into Mark and Sharon on a cruise 50 years later. Mark was wearing his mess dress and challenged me to wear mine the next time we met. And so sure enough, a couple cruises later, we met up again, and both of us were in our mess dress. Well, I've talked enough. I could go on and on with Mark's stories. But let me turn it over to you. What stories do you have about Mark? As I said earlier, sharing them aloud here will lighten the hearts of Sharon and the rest of us as we hear the jokes that Mark played on you, the stories Mark told you, or what Mark has meant to you. And don't be shy. You can just stand up right where you're seated and Speak loud so everybody can hear you. But who would like to go first? And I'm looking at you, Sam, because, and if you want to come up front, you're welcome to. Yeah, so this is our oldest daughter, Christine, aka Sam. I'm sorry. Thank you, Christine. So, one of Mark's buddies from the Air Force was commenting on Mark's snarky behavior and said that's what made working with him so much fun. And that if the other guys did not give it back as good as they got, Mark's feelings were hurt, right? And so, as our daughters grew up, they learned how to uh, defend themselves when someone's giving them a hard time. And so that was a life lesson well learned from their Uncle Mark. So, anybody else want to share? Sure. Stand up and give us your name, please, and how you know Mark.
I'm Gordon Mark. I'm near Richmond. Sharon. After they would come off their cruises, I know that we were the first stop every time, and so maybe 200 plus times. Right? I know we have people from here that met Mark and Sharon. They were the ultimate. They were everything that any of us should ever aspire to. And I started with, I think that he was very mad at me. And I was debating things to do in my retirement and stuff. And I had these wonderful mentors who run things fast. And Mark said you should go out and join Rotary. We're a wonderful group of people, right? He said it very matter of fact, didn't he? Think about it right day. This is what you want to do for the children. And Sharon's there. That's I'm going to do this, right? So I went and joined Rotary years ago. We've seen each other. And
Thank you so much. Anyone else who would like to speak?
Um, I'm Ryan Brzezinski. So, but
Denison Martin. Lived about 1994. And like thousand, I'm 700. So I jumped in the Sharon says, I'm going to same thing. Little energy. But they convinced them, and Mark being a man of 200%, did it 19 years. My dad did 7 years and 2 months when we gave him. And I did that. Like the 9 years. Double that. I know it was 100% more. So it was really a wonderful thing. Sharon and Mark came to me about 3 or 4 days before the transfer. And so they come. Never did you expect it. The one thing he did, yes, and he did 3 things. And this is the able to do it. And I figured it. That we do it. Couldn't do it without the 3 helpers that we've had here. But it was a very fulfilling journey because Mark accepted everything that we could possibly do for him. And it's a very, very grateful for him. You know, if Mark could ask anything of us, each of you have got
There are more people here than we have kids. There's other things you want me to hand those out?
Yeah. This is a donate icon. If we could ask you to do anything today, if you haven't already, sign that donate card. If you sign that donate card, we can say at least 18 months. And Mark was unable. His recipient of it. So they did. Otherwise, him or a bracelet from Lifeline Ohio. That he could be sharing the line. But, no, the way that we concept That's your chance to say it. Don't let me know. Let me tell you about a wonderful person, a person that gave 200%.
We're working on a book together, and we had gone over to the printer to check the first run off the press, to okay it. And Mark had come in. He was working up at Wright Pat, and I don't know, he'd come in from being somewhere. And we all met up in the parking lot, right? And so as Mark's walking toward us, I don't know this man from Adam, he's giving it to Sharon as hard as he can in the most sarcastic terms. And I don't know this man, and I'm thinking, I'm feeling very protective of my friend Sharon and thinking, who are you? You are you are the worst person I've ever met. I can't even use the language of what I was thinking. But I kind of learned that actually he's a man. Would do anything for anybody. So. Well, let us turn to God in prayer. Oh God, you are ever present with us on our journey towards you. Bless us now as we share in this journey with Mark. Fill our hearts with the warm memories of his life. Fill our souls with your infinite and comforting love. Take into your arms of care and love those who are mourning Mark's death. Be present with comfort, strength, love, and peace to Sharon, to friends gathered here and friends afar, to friends from Mark's Air Force days, friends from working at the theater, friends from the 200 plus cruises, and the friends that we don't even know about, just like at Panera or any place they went. Mark and Sharon made friends. Be a source of hope during this difficult season of life, and may all who mourn find comfort and strength in your presence. May they know and experience your never failing love. Amen. We're going to listen to Thanks for the Memories, then I'll have a dismissal, and then there will be military honors. And my understanding is that there will be an opening of some of the doors so that we're able to experience the 21 gun salute, and then the flag will be folded and given to Sharon. So let's listen to Thanks for the Memories.